Let's see. Okay, now, yeah.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to our workshop on qualified data. We did a short introduction, but maybe not everyone got it. Today, we're going to introduce you to the qualification of data in maritime operations. And our speaker is Ivan Faghani, the CEO of Zetasol. If you have any questions, feel free to click on the raise hand and we can address you. We will have a Q&A after each section. And we are recording this workshop, so feel free to tell us if you want us to share this recording with you afterwards.
Fantastic. Before we start the presentation, just to confirm if you can hear us fine, if someone can confirm that within the workshop. Can you guys hear us? Okay, yeah. Perfect. I got it. Okay, very good. Fantastic. So we're going to start the workshop and presentation, and but before we start and go into presentation, as Veronica mentioned, we will have different sections, and we are going to open up for Q&A, and we encourage you guys to participate. It's our first time we have a workshop to talk about issues with data, and we're really excited to share that, and we're really excited to hear what you think. We will talk about first of all why we have this meeting and this workshop is that we have been in the market for about 3 years now. Zetasol is offering energy optimization solution. I will shortly talk about Zetasol as well, but the purpose of this meeting is not to advertise Zetasol, but rather to focus on the problem that we see in the market, and we want to share with different actors. But the reason we have this workshop is that we've been in the market for about 3 years. We want to push marine to be more digital with the purpose of energy optimization to reduce CO2. But there are some issues in the market that we think quite easily can be avoided. If there are problems that easily can be avoided, we want to call for action. And we want to share different use cases with you. Maybe you realize some of those cases. And then from that, we can move forward to what we propose and how we can improve from where we are standing today. My name is Ethan, and I'm CEO and founder of Zetasol. My background is in marine, working at Volvo Penta as Chief Engineer AI since 2016. Before that, I was in truck industry, working with truck business, but my background was always working with data, trying to improve the operation, trying to improve the system by looking into data and improve the efficiency of systems. With that being said, I will move forward into this workshop. So the goal is to, again, share our experience. We want to talk about data, but we also want to talk about qualified data. We see a lot of data being shared in the market. There are a lot of sensors, there are a lot of different sources of data, but we don't think all sources of data, they are not all useful or impactful. And there is always an element of cost. We are in marine, you have a very specific setup as well. So we'll be happy to share those experiences with you and get your feedback. So we started to share what we think about improvement and about digitalization in the market. And we wrote that white paper in January. And the title was a bit maybe provocative. Are you not the owner of your marine operation data? An unfortunate reality of maritime business. So we don't think that's always the case. As we mentioned, there are many different sources of data, but the end customers, they are not always the owners of data. And we start with, we look at the problem today in this workshop. We step back a bit, looking at marine commercial business compared to different modes of transportation. We look at two different sides of challenges. We will talk about how to move forward. We propose to have a workshop. We talk about what should be the outcome of the workshop. And we talk about different challenges as you're moving from a vessel that is not digitalized to a vessel that would be digitalized, but also creates value, because digitalization by itself is not a value. We talked about what is qualified data, what are qualified components, and we will shortly talk about legal aspects. So we are not a legal expert in that area, but we have been involved in many different cases. We just want to mention few elements that you need to consider when you are having a contract with a supplier, if you're a ship owner. And then we are going to talk about what we call a technical debt, which basically means everything is working fine, but there is a hidden cost in the operation due to choices that ship owners or operational owner they made to operate the vessel. We'll talk about those things. So just shortly about Zetasol. We are in Gothenburg, Sweden. We are a spin-off from Volvo Penta. We've been in the market since 2021. We offer energy optimization solution by our main platform, which is called iHelm. It's an AI-based decision support system, which has the potential to save 10 to 25% of fuel for small and medium-sized vessels. We had many interesting use cases from ferries, tugboat, pilot boats, cargo vessels, and so on. We are growing even further, but what we think is that to make sure a solution like us can be fully effective and it could be affordable, it's very important that ship owners, they take some actions before. So unfortunately, I can't share the actual cases when it comes to problem. So I had to go to ChatGPT and create some pictures based on different use cases. So I'm gonna mention 4 different scenarios that we had in the past. Start with the problem. What is problem that we encounter in the market? And then we move forward into how to improve and move to a solution. The first scenario that we encounter, and it's not so often, but that can happen, is that a ship owner, typically medium or large size vessel, they are working with an integrator of electronic solution that could be quite a big company. And you want to connect that data to something else. So that has been installed 5 years ago. That was installed 5 years ago. And then now you want to install energy management solution came in 2024. So you want to upgrade, you want to add new systems. One case that we noticed is that the integrators, they can block the data. They can stop the data to be sent to any other systems. And there are 2 different cases here with 2 different levels of complexity. I think one is that since they're a big company, they haven't designed this sort of APIs. And they don't see any business case to come to one of the ship owners, fix their problem. But that small problem is actually a big improvement for the ship owner or operational owner. So that's the problem that we notice sometimes. But also there is a second side into that as well, that some of these integrators, they have the intention to develop everything. So they have a business model in mind that when we have the data, we can create services and selling again to the end customers and have subscription and so on. So they're trying to control the data, which we don't think it's, first of all, if it was in marine, I don't think it was even legal to do that. But also we don't think I think the role of customers here is quite important. So we're going to talk more about this use case one. So that's one of the use cases that we see sometimes. The second use case is that, or the usual scenario is that we go on board, we want to connect our system. For us, is very important that sustainability should be affordable. So we try to invest in technologies that are modern. So we don't charge per hour. You don't need to have a big investment to install a system like us. But the problem sometimes comes in that the other systems that they need to gather the data and send the data, they have an extremely costly adaptation. That happened actually a couple of times, that the cost of adaptation of other systems to send the data to an energy management solution is several times higher than cost of energy management solution. And we are quite a technical company. So when we look at the problem and look at what they are doing compared to the outcome, we look at the cost, it does not make sense. Again, we go back into, so that's the problem. I don't want to jump into the solution now. That's the second scenario that we notice sometimes, and that's more often the case than the first one. And the third situation that we see, and that as the vessel gets older, you see that scenario happening even more, is that, and now we're talking about medium-sized vessels. We're talking about vessels that are 1,000 GT or 2,000 GT or plus. Is that the vessel hasn't been maintained so much. So when you go on board, the vessel owner doesn't necessarily know about the structure of electronics. They don't know about pipelines of data. So when we go on board, we start fixing the vessel. We started fixing their problem, which is fine because we think that's quite important for us to help our customers. But again, back to the purpose of this workshop, that could be easily avoided. And that goes back to what we want to talk about, and it's called technical debt. We think that by not maintaining these simple things, the ship owners, they are adding what we call it technical debt to their operation. And the last use case we want to talk about is electric drivelines or any other modern sustainable solution that you might see in the market. So what we expected, or what I expected as someone that is in the transportation, looking at trucks, looking at vessels, looking at electric solutions, hydrogen, LNG, what I expected was that when you have electrical vessels coming on board, then the connection should be quite simple, because those system has been created 2024, 2023, quite modern. That shouldn't be a problem at all. But unfortunately, it's not the case. We see more problem with connectivity to electric drivelines. It's not always the case, but that can happen a lot compared to when you connect to a diesel engine. When you connect to a diesel engine, specifically if it's high-speed diesel engines, the suppliers of those engines, they have been providing that to truck industry and other industries as well. So standard is coming from road application to marine. But when we talk about electric drive lines, sometimes we notice that there are many different companies involved, many different small companies. They create their own driveline. They typically work with local neighbor architects. And since they work project-based, what they create eventually, they don't have enough time to think about connectivity and other things. Or if they create something, it's heavily tailor-made toward that application. So those are 4 typical problems that we notice when we go to the market. Before we go to what we propose and how to improve, I just wanted to share what we have seen in the market so far. And before jumping to the next topic, if anyone has any input to this, or if you want to share something, I would be happy to have some conversation about this with you, or you can save it to the end of the workshop. Okay. Did anyone?
Yeah, you can see. Yeah, go ahead, Dave.
I just want to echo Ethan's experience. We're working in generally in small vessels, and the problem is, particularly that last problem, it's really complex. So not only do we see lots of small companies appearing in the sector with new products that are inconsistent with the other products in the market, but we also find that some boat owners have decided to take it upon themselves to use components from other industries that we are quite surprised when we find them. So I think that's a problem we're trying to solve. We're basically building a large database of inventory. We call it inventory, but really it's just a list of the stuff that we've encountered, and I don't think that problem's going to be solved anytime soon, unfortunately.
Exactly. I mean, I can't agree more with you on this one. So when we have electric drive lines, there are many companies involved. And just imagine if in 5 years from now, you have thousands of solutions in the market with thousands of handmade connectivity solutions. How costly it would be to digitalize a ship. And that's the hidden cost that I'm not sure if the ship owners, they necessarily consider that when they go with those components.
Yeah, no, I think that's completely true. It's definitely not a consideration. I think it's actually I think for most people it's not at all on their radar. They're just looking to fix the problem today, and they have no real insight into the future as to what that next step might be. So consequently, we're finding
exactly
we're having to deal with problems that are mostly associated with time, I would say, is the issue. So fix my problem today, and worry about the future some other time.
Was there someone else? Okay. Very good. Thanks a lot for your input, Dave. So again, my background is coming from trucks. I worked with Volvo trucks. I worked with Cummins, with LNG engines, with hydrogen engines, and so on. But the last 8 years I've been in marine. So I want to bring this analogy. Like maybe you are in marine, you have been in marine for many years, but I think it's always interesting to zoom out and see how the marine market is working. Because what we see in our own market, and maybe we are a bit affected by the small medium market that we are in, what we will see is that if you compare the personal car industry with marine industry, is that you buy your personal car from a brand. Everything is designed for you. Everything is integrated. There is one brand responsible for the car. When you go to truck, that's the same. When you come to marine, it's a bit different. So you buy the frame from a company or from shipyard, from shipbuilders. But then the actual devices, systems that they are integrated on board, it's a choice of customer together with naval architect, together with pressure from or sales sales motivation from different suppliers, and you build up a vessel. So if you notice that the difference between the first one and the second one, if you consider that, you notice that okay, that can be problematic. Because if you have 20 systems, 100 systems coming from different suppliers, and each supplier they're thinking about their own product, first of all, it's very hard to think about services for the whole vessel. Second of all, if I'm a supplier, my best interest is to make sure that my part is working fine. My secondary interest could be how to send the data to someone else, but that hasn't been the case so far. But I think this analogy is quite important to keep in mind, to zoom out from how marine industry is working. And then moving a bit forward, before we go on talk about how we propose to mitigate the problem, I want to mention two different type of customers that we see. We see most of the customers that we see in the market, they are not digital. So they buy a bunker of fuel, they consume it every quarter, they have some measurement, but it's no way enough to know how to improve the operation. I would say most of the customers, they are in that stage. But also we have customers that they have been taking several steps to be more digital. But I think they are moving to a different side of that market, and they are encountering different challenge. So there are a lot of data there. So you have 80 vessels, 200 captains, you have gigs and gigs of data. So what are you going to do with those data? So you heard about data is a gold mine. I think that's true, but to extract the gold, someone has to dig in and find the gold. I think that's quite important to know that if you connect your vessel with whatever system that you have, whatever system you consider, that's not the end goal. The end goal is to provide value. And moving forward a bit to the solution. So what are we proposing is that, and that's what, to be honest, most of the time we don't see that in the market. We don't see that the first planning phase has been taken inside the companies, and they know what they are supposed to get from that and so on. Well, what we are proposing is that for most companies, they start with what they have, not with what they need. We suggest to look into what you really need and what value you want to get from the data, and start from a very simple step. We see a lot of companies that they think about, okay, we have this type of systems installed, what can we do with this? I don't think that's the right approach. The right approach is that you sit down in your company, and your company has specific goals to improve certain things. To do that, you need to look at what measurement points we need, what is the frequency of measurement, and who is going to take care of data, what level of automation we need in data analysis, in data insights. if that first step is built, the rest of the cases, they're quite easy to justify and move forward. And then again, as I mentioned, we have to start with what data is the most critical for your own operation. And to be honest, there are, of course, some synergies in the market. Everyone cares about location. Everyone cares about energy. I would say that I haven't seen any company that claims that these two are not my first priority. But then again, it goes much deeper than that. It comes the planning tool, it comes the finance tools, it comes a lot of other things as well. But the point is that that's different for each company. So they have to really think about what is important in my company and what needs to be measured. And then I think in that process, it's very important that it's not top down. You're involving different departments in your company, and you have someone from IT, someone from finance, someone from technical side. Data gathering tool is not a tech tool. If it becomes a tech tool, then you end up having many different sensors, because my background is tech. I'm basically interested in technology. But the goal of digitalization is not to have a technology tool, but rather to fulfill a requirement and create a value, right? So that's super important that you can have people from different backgrounds. They can come to that workshop, their voice can be heard. And then we use this analogy of 20%, 80%. That's just an analogy. The numbers are not exact. Just saying that you have to always think about you don't need so many sensors. With whatever sensors that you have in mind, 20% of that will give you 80% of value, like 20-80 rules, right? So if you think about so many measurement points, the value will not increase linearly by every sensor that you add. I think that's also quite important, that every vessel owner they need to consider, because those systems, they can be quite costly. I think this workshop is quite important, but it's not one workshop. You probably need to have it every year, maybe every 6 months. But I think digitalization strategy has to be anchored within the company quite frequently. Okay, so we will have a workshop, and then at the end of workshop, everyone goes, and sometimes nothing happens. And that can be quite typical, because to be honest, everyone is excited, they want to improve. But if you don't have a concrete action item after the meeting, if you don't have a concrete next step defined, it's very hard to follow up. So what we suggest and what we have seen so far, and what we propose that every ship owner or vessel owner they need to do, is that first you need to do the signal map into values. And values could be, for example, energy optimization, could be predictive maintenance of, I don't know, something, could be task planning tool to connect the customer finances to each task. Whatever the value is, you have to start with the most important value. And then you need to consider what source of signal I need, at what frequency, and is that enough to give me the value? I think when you have this signal and value defined in your company down to, it doesn't need to be very long. It could be 5-10 items. If you have these 5-10 items defined, then that is the blueprint of your company, how to create value. So again, we are building the infrastructure. We are not guiding how to use the data yet. We will come to that point. And then the second point is that, okay, now I need the signal, and then you have to look at available systems. So you might already have those data in your system somewhere. There are some challenges here. I will shortly come to that point. But the next step would be to connect the signals that you need to the available system that they're gathering and sharing the data. what is not very usual, and we don't see in many companies, many ship-owning companies, is that there are very good detailed mechanical drawing of each vessel. There are good drawings of electrical connections. I haven't seen a single data pipeline in many companies that we talk to. Data pipeline means that as you have the electrical drawing, you say this system is connected to this system using this wire, and it goes. That's how the vessel is connected. You really need to maintain the same level when it comes to data. So it's mechanical, electrical, and data. I think that's quite important to have. And that's what we also encourage every vessel owner to have. And then talking about available system, this is a super important point to consider your technical debt. So the technical debt is a gap between what you have now and what you want to have. Again, going back to the signal mapping, you have available systems. You're getting the signal. Signal is not in right quality. Why? Because the system was purchased 5 years ago, using, again, back to the discussion of electric and hybrid vessels, some tailor-made, handmade connectivity solution. Yes, the data is there, but to be honest, the data is not useful. So that's the technical debt. So what we see in many different companies is that there is a level of technical debt. In some companies, it's not so much. In some companies, that's quite deep. So what we expect from this workshop is that quite nicely to see the value signals to available signal to available systems, having a drawing of data pipeline, and then evaluate what is working today, what is not working. And to be honest, even we recommend to have that technical debt written somewhere that is quite clear that in year 2024, there is a minus X SEK or USD that we expect to pay in future to bring our system up to the level that it's supposed to be. So that's the first step. That's the like a kind of cornerstone of everything else that we suggest to build when you think about digitalization. And again, before I move to the next topic, I just want to get your input into this. Have you or any of your customers, partners had this type of workshops or discussions about digitalization, how to move forward? And I would be happy to hear your experience on this.
Anyone have any comments or thoughts?
Okay, we
Go ahead.
move
Yes.
to the next topic. And then again, back to challenges then. I'm going to go a little bit more technical now because when we talk about digitalization when it comes to marine market, we see a lot of high level discussions. And I think that's very good. We need to have those levels of discussions. However, to get something tangible out of this, I think we need to go down to every system, every component, what do we really need to have? Again, back to how marine works. You buy the components from many different suppliers. But it should be some levels of monitoring when you purchase different components. And that's kind of our main message from this workshop. that yes, marine market is complex. Yes, there are a lot of old-fashioned systems component in the market. There are a lot of handmade connectivities, but the role of or that's up to customers to push the suppliers to provide services that they are standard. But not many customers, they know what they should expect. So that's why we are having this workshop to help them. Again, back to what should we expect from a supplier? We listed 8 different items here. And what we think is that if a component has these 8 items, then you can call it is a qualified component, and I can buy the system, and there is no technical debt. So I shouldn't replace the system 2 years ahead. So first one is quite basic, is that every system should have a dedicated port to receive the data and to send the data. It's like a basic thing. The second level that we see is that they need to have standard protocols. So we see a lot of handmade protocols in the market. I think if the whole market, if the end customer, they start asking for standard protocols, which we listed that in that white paper, so you can go and read it, then things are going to be much easier. But again, if you have these 2 things, that's not done, because what is missing most of the time is that there is no data sample. So you have a system, there's a port, there are standard protocols, you read the data, but the data doesn't make sense. Because you don't have any data sample provided by the supplier. So what happens in those cases that you contact the suppliers, they will send you some data samples, takes a couple of weeks. It's a waste of time for everyone. But also it can happen that they do not have it, or they don't answer the email, and so you're ending up with having a system that has, on paper, has everything, but in reality you can connect. And then if you go again a bit deeper into that, we will say that again, since a lot of those systems they have handmade connectivity solution, you also need a translation file. I think those translation files, they need to be submitted when you purchase the system, both data samples and also translation file. What does it mean, translation file? Is that they have their own language of transferring data, and this file is needed for anyone who wants to read the data. They need to have that file. And then what we also recommend is to have you can call it data dump, you can call it quality, like a sample data or so on, which basically shows that you have the data sample, but actually showing that in a real case, that frequency of data is there a point that you might miss a data point. There are a lot of details when it comes to this data sampling, and you don't see this type of problems again going to a different type of transportation, because those connectivity points that have been verified 100 times, 1,000 times, many customers are using it. But when it comes to marine, since the volume is low, there's a good chance that you have a system that again checks the boxes on 1, 2, 3, 4, but then again you're lacking quality data. And then the number 6 is that if you have a component, it's important to have the complete signals transferred from that component. And that's the very long discussion. What is complete signals? And we say that is quite dependent on what component we are talking about. Is if that's an engine, or is it the GPS, or if it's the water jets, that that is quite different for different components. So, but what we recommend is that if you consider that component as a black box, what do you need to know input and output from that system to be able to transfer it to the other the rest of the components and create some values. I think that's a completely different discussion. It takes a long time to go and explain different components, but I would be happy to have a discussion about that after the workshop, or if you find that interesting. And then if you go a little bit further into what we consider qualified data, is that a lot of those components, they don't provide updates. So the system has been designed in 2010. You have the data sample, that's a standard product, everything is fine. But the system has been updated in 2018, and they changed the protocol. So you're losing the whole data connection with that system. So when end customers are purchasing systems from suppliers, I think it's quite important that they ask about updates, how frequent we get the updates, in what way we get the updates, and what are you providing in each updates. And I think number 8 that's quite important is added to the contract. So we don't necessarily sign contracts for every single component that we purchase, but when it comes to electronics integration, I think it should be quite clear that who owns the data, who has the right to transfer the data, and at what cost. So those things I think should be quite clear when you purchase a system from a supplier, specifically from the integrators, that they have the connection to many different systems. So that's what we call it. If you have these 8 steps, what we can say that you have a good system, the system is connected, and you shouldn't expect any extra cost in future to maintain that system. Back to the legal contract. We are not a legal company, so we can't advise on how to write a contract, but we have been involved in many discussions and signing contract with our own customers. And we want to be really fair to our customers, and we consider many different points, and data ownership is one of them. Data sharing option, with who you can share the data with only owners, but we can also share the data with component owners and so on. Cost of that should be quite clear. Again, back to use cases that we discussed in the beginning of the presentation. Yes, you can own your own data, and then you have the option of sharing, but it's going to cost you way more than if you purchase a new system. And then there are some GDPR costs that you need to consider as well. Again, we can't go deeper into that topic, but if you find that interesting, we will have a Microsoft form sent to you when we get closer to the end of the workshop. And if you find that interesting, we can talk more about that after the workshop. Again, so we come to technical debt. Why I'm talking about technical debt a lot? Because that's the most common thing that we see when we talk to our end customers. We come on board, we want to install an energy optimization solution, AI-based. But if you're having a fully modern data analysis solution, it sits on top of digitalization. And most of the companies, they are lacking that. So what can we do to avoid that? I think we discussed a lot about this within the presentation today, but I would say number one most important thing is that stop buying things that are not qualified. and qualification that goes back to the previous slide when I talked about how to check different items. So if we start, or if end customers, they start purchasing those systems, things are going to get easier for both new suppliers, but also for the customers, because they don't have they don't need to pay extra costs to connect other systems. But also another thing is that as soon as you, if you start replacing your current system at the rate that you feel comfortable with, to sync quality data, then you open up a lot of doors for new opportunities. And also update data